Hello and greetings. Welcome to day 17. And my name is Irmina. Thank you for stopping by again. I have quite a bit of stuff to share with you about my 17th day. And I haven't said this before, but I'm not just talking about the 17th day. Obviously, the last one I did was day 11. So will be talking about what happened between day 12 to day 17th. And it was filled with different things, but it was pleasant. So I'll start with that. But what I want to make sure that I'm documenting is my own personal growth, but also how sometimes for some of us, especially highly creative, highly spiritual, highly sensitive, tend to see setbacks as failures when actually what they are is part of the process of growth. So this is what I'm hoping comes through today. Um, on right before I think it was day 12, maybe day 13, I started to think about um, the body's made for movement. That's what it's made for. Uh, that's why if you don't move, your muscles atrophy. And people who are bedridden, unfortunately, they are forced to do some sort of activity, even if it's just somebody lift their legs up or whatever. Otherwise, they end up with bed sores. So our bodies are made to move. That is not an optional thing. It is what it's made for. And then of course there's a spectrum of movement. And that spectrum is based on your ability, your height, your length, the length of your legs. Like some people are absolutely great at doing jumps because they've got super quads and, you know, really strong, powerful legs. Some people are excellent at doing um, upper body type activities because of their upper body strength, and you name it. And then there's some people who have a very coordinated full body. I'm one of those people that was blessed with ancestral coordinated body from top to bottom. So when I move, everything coordinates together. When dancing in particular, but even if I'm doing sports, I tend to be well coordinated, and that's a blessing. But it's also shows how integrated my body can be. And so if I'm not moving and my foot is has an issue, everywhere else feels it. You know, if my shoulder has an issue, everywhere else acts a little differently. It doesn't stay localized to what's happening in that particular area of my physiology. Um, I used to talk about biospiritual um, health, and I still do, but I haven't mentioned it recently. And that also gets influenced. So that means if there are spiritual things going on within my body temple, they also affect my movement, my dancing, my overall well-being, etc. So that's what was coming up for me, and it was like, I really cannot um, stop moving for too long. Like I must keep my body moving because it literally affects everything. And we know, the science has proven you release a whole cocktail of hormones, serotonin, and this and that makes you feel better, that makes you get things done, that makes you take more initiative, that makes you do this, that makes you do that. So if you're not moving, your body puts you to sleep eventually. Okay, that's not supposed to be funny because we're talking about like long-term sleep, right? Transition. So movement is critical, right? So that came up for me, and it made me recommit on like day 12, day 13. I was like, okay. So I did a slew of stuff. So now I'm going to summarize what happened overall from day like 13 onto day 17, because otherwise this will end up being a very long video. Um, and there were three things that I came up with that were challenges in the past that peeked through. It's like they peeked through the window to check on me, but then they went back. I'm not saying they're not going to come back later, but they were like, and then so let me get started. The first thing, actually, it's four things. Huh. The first thing is a feeling of, I'm not going to call it doom because that's too strong, but a feeling of potential failure, you know. And because people like us, highly sensitive, highly spiritual, highly this, highly that, highly creative, um, intellectually, we're always learning. We tend to have a, I'm not going to use the word perfected as most people use it. I use that word to mean the original meaning or the etymology of the word, which means um, completion. We tend to have this very strong desire to make everything that we do to its fullness and completion. And that's what perfection is. That's what perfected mean. As a some humans are born with perfected being. Some are not. Some have stuff that still needs to be uh, cooked, that wasn't fully cooked in the oven, that needs to be done before they can be fully enlivened in this realm. So that's how I'm using the word perfected, okay? And not perfectionism in the modern way, meaning someone who has trouble moving on. That's not how I'm using it. So, but we have this um, vision of perfectionism about whatever it is we're doing. And when we're not seeing that right away, what may come up is, and it came up for me again, it peeked through the window. It didn't stay because I was like, we're good. It peeked through the window of life and it was like, what if? What if you don't do this? What if this happened? What if that happened? And because it peeked through the window, I experienced a setback. And the setback was I tripped and twisted my foot. And I believe this was connected. I'm using the word believe here because I didn't really sit down with it and analyze it. So it's a belief, it's not a knowing, but I believe it's connected to this slight doom, impending imperfection, impending. Again, I'm using the word perfection differently, which is impending, not completing fully. So the impending peek through the window, and then I kind of set up myself by doing something that I know I shouldn't do, which is reading while I'm walking. Okay, so twisted my ankle. My knee said, ouch. Not my ankle, my knee said, ouch. And I wobbled my way back home, and everything was okay. It was fine. Afterwards, there was no swelling or whatever. But it really, it shook me a little bit because it was a real twist. It wasn't like it was like, like my whole foot dipped. Do not walk and read. Not smart. Especially, anyway. So I believe that was a moment of um, self-created doom or self-created destruction. And so I sat back. I was like, okay, what's really going on with this? And it was okay. I felt in that moment I didn't have enough time to do my walk and do the thing I needed to read. And that's not true. The walk is 20 minutes. Right? That's not true. So, and it was a way for me to revisit that lesson. And I revisited long enough. Again, it was a window to go, no, next time, please read another time. Um, do your 20-minute walk, and then you can read in the afternoon, or you can read the next day, or whatever the thing may be. Just don't walk and read. It's just not smart. Um, And also, what that does is it used to, I don't have that issue anymore, but I know it may happen to you, so I'm going to share it. It may also create this, I already messed this up. I might as well give up. It's a way to also like give up. I'm not going to complete this. I'm not going to do this. I know I will. So I'm no longer struggling with that, but I have in the past. I've given up because it was like, this is too hard. This is an extra step, an extra this, an extra that I don't have the time to do. I've got this, I've got that, I've got this to do. All these excuses, all these justifications show up because rather than face challenge of adjustment and an adaptation that is part of life, especially in a culture that always pulling um, at us. Anyway, I'm moving on so that this does not end up being a 30-minute video. The second thing is um, the word nervous system is coming up everywhere. and I know why. So I'm gonna try not to use it a lot. I may not have a choice because once certain we are being environmentally aligned with what some people want the future to look like. So certain words go into this pool that allows us to become part of the mass consciousness. Nervous system is one of them. If you haven't heard it yet, you'll hear it everywhere. Everybody's using nervous system, nervous. And for those of us who are still aligned with our African system practices, African origin system practices, or any indigenous practices, we have a particular energy we refer to as central nervous system, and that energy aligns more with that which is the doorway, the crossroad. And this happened. This is Christian too. Christianity, that would be Jesus. Any cross related or crossroad related energy, Krishna. Um, and obviously for the African, not African, but for Haitians, it's Legba or Cousin in some traditions. Cousin is a crossroad energy, some family lineages. And so um, and there's so many of them, and it's not limited to just Krishna. There's, for example, I can't think of the elephant one, but there's all these different ones that are crossroad energies. That is central nervous system related energies. Okay, um, nothing is ever perfectly aligned when you use scientific terminology because science is so much younger. It's literally comes from these older systems. You can research this, by the way. Almost all sciences that we seek usually were at some point something that was considered to be spiritually a miracle or um, a, bio-spiritual chemical, and then in science go into these cultures to study it, and then they try to find the likeness in the modern version, and remove the spiritual aspect and just make it a physical, controllable uh, part of life, controllable by man, not obviously by higher and greater systems. Back to what I was trying to say. So I'm trying not to use the word nervous system all the time, but it is already in the stratosphere. It's already in our language every day, so it's happening already. But the central nervous system or anything relating to that group of energetic movement in the body governs everything else. And one of the things that happens to me and everyone else when we start a new program or whatever is if we don't for if our central nervous system is not um, and I'm going to use the word central nervous system energies. That way I'm honoring the truth of my understanding. Okay. So if our central nervous system energies are not aligned and respected and given the subtle, their subtle needs are not met, we shoot ourselves in the foot. And this is what I mean. So highly sensitives, highly emotional, highly uh, spiritual, highly creative, highly intellectual, um, experience cumulative effects of central nervous system overload. I'm trying so hard to stay within the context of one language and it's not working very well. And as a result of this, um, we can experience overwhelm very, very quickly. That's why the crossroad pathway simplifies it. If you look at people who are very, very religious, of any kind of religion, one of the main goals you hear them say is, "I give this to, I give this to, I give that to." And all those highly spiritual, I give this to. That's a way to simplify so that the central nervous system energies handle it and we are not overwhelmed and we can take care of, we don't end up being burnt out. The most successful way to prevent burnout is to believe in something greater than yourself and give that something the problem, whatever the thing is. I'm not dealing with this, that way it removes the stimulus. It's a stimulus, right? It removes the stimulus. That's a long way to get to saying that When I start walking on, especially in the summer months, I love when it's very few people out there or very few cars, very few this, very few that. And that happens in the winter months. That happens in uh, the time when uh, people just kind of stay indoors more. So it's a beautiful, calm, not overly stimulated. And also, even the trees have fewer leaves. So it's just a much calmer walk. But as soon as spring and summer hits, everybody wants to walk. So the second thing that came up for me, God, it took me a while to get here. The second thing that came up for me was overstimulation. It peeked through the window again. It didn't stay because I've moved through this multiple times. It peeked through the window. It was like, are you about to get overstimulated? It's like, no, not this time. But what ends up happening is like more people are walking, more dogs, more cats, and more birds, more squirrels, more cars, more this, more that. So this, what is usually a calming effect of quiet walk in the dawn becomes this overly stimulating walk. And I have gotten much better at tuning the world out. I don't necessarily give it to an energy or, take care of that for me. I'm still alert because you got to be when you're walking, except when you decide to read. Um, but it becomes how long is this? Oh, this is long. It becomes a something to watch out for. Overstimulation, and that can discourage somebody who's highly sensitive from going out. I don't want to walk because there's too many people, there's too many dogs, there's too. Find what works best for you. Um, and I'm not going to advocate wearing headphones to walk because that's, especially if you, depends on where you're walking, right? If you're walking inside of a gym, it may not be as much of an issue. But if you're walking in the woods, I'm not sure that's a smart way to approach that. But there are ways of reducing the stimulus from the environment. And sometimes being in the woods actually will reduce the stimulus because there's less cars, there's less people, there's other things you can do. So that came up for me, but it didn't stay, thank goodness. The third thing is not allowing ruminations to interrupt and bother my walk. Okay, so that peaked in as well. I can't remember which day it peaked in, but it was something somebody had said, and I found myself revisiting it during my walk. My walk. I was like, no, 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 you're not coming in my walk. So I found myself ruminating over something I either heard, and there's so much going on in the stratosphere, especially around the country and potential issues, and it was something like that. It wasn't a personal friend. It was something in the news, and it wasn't so much the news because I don't want to call it the news because I don't watch those type of things. But it was it was a discussion, a video discussion of something, and I found myself ruminating over it and thinking about it. And I was like, no, you're not interrupting my walk. My walk is for me to focus on my well-being, blah blah blah. So I shut the door on it, and you can do that. You can shut the door on visitors because thoughts are visitors. Some you can invite them to stay, or you can say no, you're not welcome here today. Um, Maybe another time I'll make time for you to think about this, but not today. We can do that. We have the power to govern who comes and stays in this matrix of our mind. So remember that. So rumination tried to stop by, and I just did not allow it to happen. There was going to be no deep processing of somebody else's, you know, intelligent perspective of the world. No. All right. The fourth one, was there more than four? Okay, that's the last one. The fourth one was decision fatigue, over analyzing and decision fatigue. That shows up quite a bit as well, and that can deter your movement practice. It peeked through the window. Like I said, it peeked, it didn't stay. What it showed up as was, um, where are my sweats? Where are my this to go for the walk? And I went through, I rearranged everything that I need for my movement practices and shut that down. Okay. There was a time when I was younger, especially, and I'm gonna try to keep this under 22 minutes. There was a time, especially when I was younger, that I would be very particular about how I look when I stepped out. I grew up in a very culturally conscious home where appearances was important. And so I would have to look good even if I went for a jog. When I was running heavily, everything had to match, not necessarily match, but I had to look good. Okay. Today, my clothes are practical. As a matter of fact, I call them uniforms. They're one form. Uni means one form of clothing for that appropriate thing I'm doing. So my uniforms for movement or habits, as in I consider myself to be somewhat of a lay monk, right? So my habits, which is my clothing, have a one form, simplify everything, and sometimes the same color. I have six of the same thing, right? So I can reduce decision fatigue. What am I going to put on? This and that. If I find a pair of shoes that work well for my high arch and tendency to supinate, bam, I'm sticking with this for a while until I get another evaluation by my orthopedic. You know, simplify, simplify. Do not have 10, 15 choices. The ego, the mind tends to go on over analyzing or paralysis, freeze up, and 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, nothing gets done because the decision itself became the activity. If you spend 20 minutes deciding what to wear, and I'm saying you because I don't do that anymore, but if anybody spends 15 minutes and 20 minutes, that's 20 minutes you could have been walking. So the decision to walk should be simple for you. Okay. If you're into t-shirts, that's what it should be. If you're into something else, that's what it should be. I promise myself no more than 22 minutes videos. I'm going to stop there and say this. Out of everything I've shared today, maybe one of them connected with you and what your struggles are when you're starting a program, or when you're continuing a program, or when you're restarting a program. Find out what that is and just focus on that one thing. If it's decision fatigue, focus on that and just get that resolved. There are so many things out there. Out of everything I just discussed, there's enough information out there that you can find the information you need. So thank you so much for watching. Maybe I'll do a part two to this. I feel like I have more to say. Maybe not. Thank you for watching. Thank you for visiting. And until the next time, this is Irmina signing off.